have such sights to show you. We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron.
What it is.
What it is, my man.
Yeah. It's my new catchphrase. You like it?
No, I liked it, but personally, I'm a big fan of my 40-year-old white mom response. What it is, my man.
How do it be, my guy?
Cut me some slack, Jack.
Getting spicy with your lingo over here.
I know, super spicy,
Yeah.
super duper.
You know, we white people
spicy.
can't handle spice.
I know. The heat has been kicking up, and with the people all going to log cabins and whatnot, for camping.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be a good time to go revisit a film that we did and
Summer
stuff.
camping season?
Yeah, summer camping season, but this one's just going to be Back to the Lodge again there for Evil Dead 2. And before we talk about that, since this is the very first sequel that we've done for our podcast, in your opinion, whenever it comes to general sequels, what do you expect a sequel to accomplish from the prior film?
Like, what do I hope it does, or what are my expectations of what it's actually going to do?
Well, just like in general, not even for this film specifically
Right.
It was just more so that way. Because, as you know, with horror films, they tend to have a lot of sequels more than any other genre.
Yeah.
They just keep, like, one after the other there. It's kind of like action films in that sense there. So I was curious on where your stance is whenever it comes to sequels. I mean, obviously, you've talked in great length about Star Wars sequels there, but I was just curious on where your overall stance is with sequels.
Right. I think Star Wars is a little bit different because they're like always packaged in trilogies, so sequels are coming. That those are usually planned with those in mind. Sequels in general, I tend to think is like, maybe I'm a little bit jaded, but most of the time whenever I see a sequel to a popular movie, I'm like, hey, they wanted to make some more money, and this is going to be a worse version of the first, There's very rarely do I watch a sequel and I'm like, that lived up to the first one, or, But I feel like that's changed a little bit, especially in the advent of just like, they were trying to milk cash from it from the beginning. Like in the advent of Marvel movies and stuff, where it's like, okay, like in the beginning before they were like the Marvel franchise, like Iron Man 2 sucked and Iron Man 1 was a lot better. But like because that's how movies worked before the Marvel movies. But now, like with the new Spider-Man movies or something, like the first Spider-Man was fucking lame, and then the next two were pretty good. So I don't know, whatever. I don't feel like that rule has to be followed. But for horror movies, I don't know that I've ever seen a sequel to a horror movie. Yeah, I can't think of like a sequel I've watched for a horror movie, so I don't know. Because for like when you think about action movie sequels, it's like, okay, they're just gonna have bigger, better stunts and dumber, plot line, whatever. That doesn't affect the quality as much for an action movie because I'm just here to see things explode. For a horror movie, I'm just here to get scared. I don't know. I assume they have to have a whole new bunch of characters that are all going to die again,
Yeah.
And some, upgraded evil, because there always has to be some sort of power scaling, you know what I mean? The scary thing is even scarier this time, so.
Yep, and whenever it comes to, like, all the films we could have revisited and stuff, how do you feel about watching a sequel to a film that you thought was fairly fine, whenever you watched it the first time?
I think it'd be interesting. I honestly don't even, it's been so long, I don't even remember most of the finer details of the first Evil Dead we watched.
Well, I don't think that'll be a problem for this film. Without spoiling too much, it won't be a problem.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that we're sequeling a film that doesn't have, a villain, you know what I mean? It doesn't have, this is Jason, and this is, Freddy, and these are the people that you're going to see again, There wasn't, an iconic, named villain in Evil Dead. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to see what Evil Dead 2 has in
Mm-hmm.
store.
Yeah, and you've not heard anything about Evil Dead 2 itself, just to confirm, right?
Just what we talked about on the podcast for Evil Dead 1, which I think you mentioned like one or two things about the sequel, and I don't even really remember them. So
Well, it's probably for the best, because I'm very curious. This is going to be like an interesting experiment, because my history with Evil Dead 2 is that I heard about this film the most. Like, I heard about it more so than Evil Dead. Whenever I was first diving into horror, people talked about it a lot. So I knew, like, clips and stuff that happened in the second one before sitting down and watching it. And even with knowing the stuff ahead and stuff, I didn't feel like it hindered the experience overall watching the second one. So whenever it came to analyzing which sequel to do first out of all the other ones specifically, I felt like with Evil Dead, I feel like it's going to be one of the most interesting sequels to analyze specifically there. I think you'll have a lot of interesting thoughts and commentary about it overall.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, everyone, just stay where you're at, because Aaron and I are going to catch up and watch Sam Raimi's sequel to his horror hit, The Evil Dead 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
And we have just come back from watching Evil Dead 2. So, Aaron.
Yeah.
So, for your first sequel of the podcast, how was this sequel?
It was an interesting sequel to
Yeah.
pick for the first sequel, because it's not even really a sequel, in the sense that it doesn't really continue at the end of where the last one stopped. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, it was definitely an interesting one. That's why I wanted to choose it first, because I know you know how the traditional sequel goes.
Right.
And this sequel here, and this is your first horror sequel, isn't like a normal sequel, because usually with horror sequels, as you can imagine, it continues on the story here.
Right.
But definitely for those that don't know, Evil Dead 2 doesn't actually pick off immediately where the first one left off, but instead retells the first part of the story they basically had in Evil Dead 1. And I told Aaron this during the movie, but basically it was due to the fact that I think they were having like right issues and stuff with the first film. Like, they couldn't like reuse scenes from the movie there, so they're like, okay, well, we might as well just retell it our own way, specifically, so that way people are caught up there. So people have specifically talked about, well, is Evil Dead 2 a sequel or a remake? And it's like a requel in a sense, where it's both specifically there, where it basically retells the first part, basically the entirety of Evil Dead, and then it automatically jumps into the continuation from where the very first film left off. And I can't imagine, at least from my knowledge of stuff, I don't know too many films that have done this.
Yeah, because it's like, it's not. Yeah. I mean, it's a requel. Yeah, it's not a true remake, because the things that they, it's not a remake because they don't really tell the same story. They left out, like 4 of the other characters. They were like, these people were never here. They kind of like retcon it a little bit. They were like, it's just Bruce and what's her name, Flora,
Linda.
Linda. Yeah. Bruce, Linda. They showed the highlight reel from that. They remake that real quick, and then they're like, okay, here's the second plot. You know what I mean? Like, where that comes in. So it's not even really a remake, but then it's not really a sequel either, because it doesn't continue from the point of like, here was the experience of these like 6 people in the cabin. It was just like, here's a simplified version of what happened, minus those characters, because they're not important for this story. Yeah.
And how do you feel about them going about the route they did specifically? Because again, I know you weren't the biggest fan of the first film, but just the way they kind of retconned some stuff and remade it, and kind of amplified Ash's character a little bit more than what he was in the first film.
Right. I think I like it, actually. I think the story of like just 2 lovers go into this cabin and it goes wrong makes a lot more sense for the story that we're trying to tell here, and like it's a lot cleaner, and just like, yeah, these two people came, Ash survived, had to kill Linda, and now he's paranoid in this cabin that's kind of like harassing him for the first half of the movie, while the other characters arrive.
Yeah, and so obviously it's kind of weird how we had to start off talking about the whole idea of a sequel there and stuff, but after watching Evil Dead 2, before we get into like plots, characters, and stuff, what are your old vibes from it overall?
I liked it. It's a lot more. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun movie. The first movie we watched had, was fun moments. I feel like it was a horror movie that had a lot of fun with like the aspect of the villain. Like because it was just like repossessing corpses, and they were like demons, and they're like ha ha, like trickstering kind of vibe. But I wouldn't label it like a comedy. But this one I would almost label like a comedy. It was like it was definitely a horror first, but then like the second label I'd slap on it as comedy, because they like, it was actively funny. They were doing bits. They were doing like yeah. There was there's even like a fucking, what's the hand from Addams Family?
Let's see, Thing.
Yeah, the Thing. They literally had like a bit of him in there. I mean, it's not literally him, but it's just like they have like those sorts of horror vibes where it's like funny too. I don't know.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you really enjoyed it. That's why I kind of overall wanted you to see this sequel and stuff, because it's like you mentioned before, like before watching the movie, typically sequels don't really improve the story and stuff. It tend to kind of go down a deeper rabbit hole and stuff. On like, man, the first film was good, but I don't know what they were thinking the next couple of films there. But that's good vibes overall there. And we'll go ahead and talk about the plot here a little bit there. So again, kind of like we mentioned before, it retells the story in the first Evil Dead film, where basically they're going out to this cabin, but this time it's only Bruce Campbell's character, Ash Williams, bringing his girlfriend Linda along. And it's like one of those things, like, they're not supposed to be there at the cabin, but they're trying to do a romantic getaway while the owners are gone. Well, as luck would have it, Necronomicon is there, and some incantations are cited, thus summoning the Evil Dead once again. And it goes through the motions of the first film, and pretty much picks up exactly where the first film leaves off. And you get to see what exactly happened to Ash at the very end of Evil Dead throughout this movie. So plot-wise, aside from us talking about the remaking of the beginning and stuff, I feel like it has a very great way to follow up from the first ending of the first film, because, it's typical. You see a lot of like the last jump scares and stuff towards the end of the film, so it's interesting to see them pick up exactly where they left off there, as opposed to some films where they would just jump to an entirely different cast of characters and story overall there. So I really like that aspect a ton. And again, it's just kind of like you're along for the ride there, as they're just trying to figure out, okay, how do we deal with the situation we have going on there. I would probably say that's the overall plot I've gotten from Evil Dead 2, is just them being confronted with the Evil Dead and struggling with, okay, what do we do now? So, I mean, it's fairly simple, it's nothing like deep levels or anything to analyze. It's just basically fight to survive there, which definitely works out good. I definitely like them being surrounded in the one location there. Have anything else to mention about the story and the flow and stuff, or?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's a strong but simple plot device to just be like, listen, we can't go out in the forest right now because the forest is going to kill you. The cabin's not really safe either, so we have to be on our guard, but, it's a lot safer than trying to wander out in the woods where we'll surely die, and you gotta wait till dawn to escape, or find another solution. So
yeah, and so I feel like there's nothing too much to dive into the plot, and there will be more stuff we'll be able to dive into later there. So how about we talk about our characters, especially starting with our main one, Ash Williams. So from the first film, from what I can remember, you seem to like Bruce Campbell's character just fine as Ash. Like, he was fine. What did you think about the way they almost kind of remade this character a tiny bit, fine-tuned it?
They threw in some Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
They were just like, what if he was played by Jim Carrey? But it's Bruce Campbell pretending to be Jim Carrey, pretending to be Ash.
I could definitely see that. One of the things that, I mean, and a lot of fans have mentioned this too, because out of the trilogy, this tends to be the fans' favorite Evil Dead film. And so the thing they like about it the most is that Ash is starting to get personified as more confident and kind of more, again, not super egotistical, but definitely more confident in himself there overall.
Right.
And so you start to see him start to become more of the leader and stuff, as opposed to in the first film, he kind of took a backseat there because he was more introverted and unsure of himself. Whereas this one, whether he likes it or not, he's being forced as a leader, but he seems to have that better mentality of being a leader and kind of being confident and be like, don't worry about it, carefree attitude.
Yeah.
So I feel like doing that has made Evil Dead 2 even more endearing to watch. I've seen this film multiple times. I mean, especially whenever I first watched it, whenever I was a teenager. And from there, I just watched it repeatedly. And so I've always loved the character of Ash Williams there. And so he's definitely deserved to have one of the mantles of like horror icon. Just because, again, he's so much fun to watch there. And I love the physicality Bruce brings into the role there. But you're definitely right whenever it comes to the overall genre of Evil Dead 2. It's definitely a horror comedy. There's like no if and or buts about it there, as opposed to the first one where it was more pure horror there specifically, even though there was over-the-top moments that were a little bit goofy.
Right.
But again, I don't feel like it hurts this film at all to have comedy in it. And it kind of allows for a bit of brevity and stuff with how insane this film can get.
Right. I feel like it honestly lifted up the universe even more because, like, in the first Evil Dead, they definitely had the thing where it's like the demon and the evil spirits are mischievous and sort of funny in a way. But the main characters in the story weren't laughing. They're like, oh yeah, I get the joke, but I ain't laughing, brother. But in this movie, I mean, like the main characters are also sources of comedy, and not in like a gore kind of way, but really in like a like kind of like in a lighthouse kind of way, where like the two people going crazy are just funny to watch, and like the people behind the camera aren't pretending it's not. You know what I mean? They lean into the fact that it's funny to watch the hysterics and the things that happen. The slapstick comedy that ensues when you're getting thrown around by a bunch of demons that are trying to have fun with you and eat your soul. So I feel like it really elevates the movie when not only that it doesn't take itself that seriously, but it also like leans into not being serious. So
no, it definitely gives like Evil Dead a more unique identity and stuff amongst the rest of not only horror films but just films in general, because I can't really say I've seen too many films that are exactly like Evil Dead.
Right.
There's some that are in the ballpark, sure, and stuff, but this is definitely very unique sort of flavor Sam Raimi has brought to this film there. And kind of mentioning the other characters, because you keep mentioning like they also had some kind of jokes. It's not too surprising that with Linda's character, you don't really get to see too much of her develop there, because especially this iteration of Linda, you only get to know her for like 15 minutes, and even then that's pretty that's
like 5 minutes.
yeah it feels like 5 minutes there overall there. And I feel like overall she did what the story needed her to do and stuff, so it's no knock against Denise Bixler who played her, but it definitely was kind of like oh okay, because it just flies right through there. I found it very interesting how they introduced more characters to go to the cabin there, because I'm sure you were wondering yourself, like, okay, is it just going to be Ash in the cabin all by himself there?
Right.
Specifically, but as we see later, a group of characters comes back there because their parents own the cabin there. So you're led by like Annie and I assume boyfriend. No, I was about to say Jake, but he's the hillbilly there. It's
Joanne.
yeah, yeah, Joy, Barbara Joe,
Barbara Joe.
You have Annie and her boyfriend Ed coming in, and heading over to the cabin, and then they see that the bridge is out, which then introduces them to good old Jake and Bobby Joe. And so going through each of the characters, starting with Annie there, how did you feel Annie was as a character?
Yeah, I liked Annie and Ed both. They both are like, sort of prim and proper upper class. They're the related to this professor guy that locked himself in the woods to discover the secrets of the evil dead, and they're like, we're gonna go see Daddy with these new pages of the book, so we can solve the mystery. And they're a funny contrast to the folks they run into, the hillbilly folks. That's just a funny contrast of like, this is a trial you can tell they've never had to face before,
Oh yeah, definitely.
As soon as they step into the cabin and are confronted with a bloodied handless ash and and all the horrors of the cabin, they quickly have to find their footing or be part of the Evil Dead. So.
No, I think they definitely serve as a good group of characters overall to be surrounded by Ed, because again, Annie is more of the like scholar and stuff, definitely not used to having to fight in any sort of scenario whatsoever. So I feel like, while we don't get like a deep character, I feel like she serves the story well with her purpose there, just to kind of especially to have a relationship to Henrietta and the good old professor that was
right. They used to have
translating.
In that state, yeah. I think it's funny too. Her outfit, you can even just tell by their outfits what they are like. But she just has these like jorts on with her shirt tucked into it, and these like high socks. And she's just like, howdy.
No, her and Ed definitely scream upper class.
Yeah,
overall.
I feel like they just like way uppied up Ed. He had like the sweater tied over his shoulder. He looks like fucking Carlton Banks if you.
I wish,
but very white.
I wish Alfonso Riviera would have been in Evil Dead too.
They could have just swapped him out with Ed.
Well, I'll have you know, Evil Dead.
My father is part of the Evil Dead now. Rest in peace.
Oh my God. I'm joking.
Rip Phil, you were a real one.
Yeah, so let's talk about Ed and stuff. Annie's companion and everything. I feel like he's like Scott Light from the first film. Overall, just another kind of confident, like
he's just a fucking yuppie.
Yeah, exactly. But
it's like he walked out of a country club. That's his whole character.
Yeah, definitely. And so he kind of gets less development there. But again, I don't ever feel like it hurts the film. It's just who these people are overall, and especially who the characters are once you meet good old Jake and Bobby Joe. There, just a whole bunch of like hillbillies living out in the woods.
I was willing to suspend a lot of disbelief in this movie, but that's the one thing I can't get over. There's no way that guy would be with that girl. It's like a greasy meth head with just a 10 out of 10. Just how did that happen?
It happens in real life.
No, it doesn't. If it happened in real life, I'd be with a 10 and 10 right now. Hit me up.
Are you like you're a greasy meth head?
I'm a greasy meth head. I'm doing all the things he's doing. Why is it not working for me?
Let it be known on the record, there is no sign of powder or crack pipes on Jake there. But I feel like having Jake just kind of be like the more dopey, country boy there also adds a good mix there. Because, again, I feel like whenever it comes to a group of survival, there's always going to be weak links in the group there. And he's definitely one of them there. You could definitely tell where he's just like, I ain't about this there. So I feel like it's a good mix to throw in there. And then let's talk about clearly the attractive to Aaron, Bobby Joe.
Yeah. I mean, she's just like kind of country hit girl, valley girl, I guess is really what she ended up.
Yeah.
It's just like, hi,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wearing a little crop top, and I'm in this movie for sex appeal because they killed the other one right away. So hi.
Oh my god. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and so I feel like with the characters, even though there isn't a lot to say, I feel like it's kind of similar to most slasher films where you don't need a whole lot of depth for the character. You need
Right.
kind of more like a character almost there for the story to be super successful and impactful there. And so I feel like these four peeps coming up to the cabin there definitely help to add more to the story and situation that's going on at hand there.
Yeah.
Was there anything you wanted to mention about characters before we dive into more nitty gritty kind of other aspects of the film?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. One of the things, and was one of the compliments that you had about the first film, is you're like, I like the amount of blood that is shown in the movie.
Yeah, it was
and
gratuitous.
yes, and how was it in this film?
It was like 4 times more. I feel like with the added, like, where they just embraced the comedy, they also just embraced just how off the wall some of these stunts were, just, yeah, just, I mean, there were certain scenes where it was literally just like a fire hose of blood, just like, I felt like, and that was part of the comedy, it was just like how ridiculous and over the top some of the scenes were, but...
No, definitely. And with how over the top a lot of stuff is, there is also like a lot of impressive visual effects. I would say like the special effects are out of this world, to where like even if I know how they do a majority of them, especially since I've seen it so many times and I've dived into this film, it's still impressive nonetheless there, especially seeing some of the shots there. And it's funny because it's like one of those things that people have dived into the scene to find specific stuff, and I used to look for those specific stuff specifically, like one of the niftiest details they have in the film I have pointed out to you is that whenever Ash goes out to the shed, you see like a Freddy Krueger glove hanging above the door there specifically. So it's like small stuff like that I appreciate, but then there's also like, I wouldn't say it's like bad filmmaking, but because of how ambitious Sam Raimi was with some of the camera shots, like the one where it pans and zooms around the house chasing Ash around, if you look up at the rafters, you can actually see that they're inside a high school gymnasium there, because like doing a shot like that, it's very almost impractical to have done it in the cabin because it was way smaller there.
Right, you need a set to,
Yeah, so then, and with how ambitious it was, I never felt like it was sloppy filmmaking, but just the camera work and everything they wanted to. It was so interesting that I was like, oh, I finally see the gymnasium, because before on a DVD, it would be so dark and pixelated that I never saw it there, which probably worked out in the theaters and stuff the first time you see it there. But again, it wasn't like that jarring, because I'm sure you didn't even notice it whenever.
No, I didn't know. The only really like obvious practical effects flub I noticed, but there's one part where it's like some limbs are flying and you can, you can like see the fishing line that they're suspended on. But for the most part, I mean, there's really good practical effects. Obviously, it doesn't like all stand the test of time because you can just like digitize so much of this stuff now, but it's all like still entertaining.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly how much of it would be spoilers to talk about specific effects there overall. So I mean, I probably what would you say is probably a good cutoff point for like spoilers? Because I feel like it's going to be hard.
I feel like you can talk pretty generally about all the effects, but if you want
I think like maybe just avoid the ending overall, or certain demises maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's just do about that, because there's a lot of setup scenes and stuff where they do a lot of effects where it's like at times it almost feels like Sam Raimi's like, I want to try doing this effect. Let's see if I can do it.
yeah.
Let's do that. And I don't mind it at all, because I feel like it's just nevertheless impressive to do that sort of stuff there, whether it's as simple as a rocking chair rocking back and forth by itself, or whenever it came to some special dance scene at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, that one was like, that one was just kind of, that one was funny to me, but it was before I reached the point in the film where I realized it was supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is bad.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. I didn't know because I didn't hear anything from you there. It was just dead silence while you see this dance sequence go on there from Linda.
I was just like, okay.
Yeah. And so then I think it was just finally you kind of settled into the camp overall there, and you're like, okay, I get it now. And so you're able to enjoy it. But there's like so many sequences like that. Was there any like special effects that you're like, that's my absolute favorite thing you've done?
I mean, I did really like, the corpse in the beginning that was dancing, but it made several different appearances. I like there's like an animated dead hand for a while, and it makes these funny chittering noises.
Oh yeah.
So that was my favorite.
Yeah.
So that was really funny. Yeah, those were a couple of my but some of the ones that like got me the most is there was a time when someone was getting dragged through a forest and and they like hit these puddles and it's just like and I automatically like had the big echoing fart effect in my head whenever they hit, because there's like these brown puddles that just that just played in my head, but it wasn't part of the movie. That was really funny because it's just like slapstick comedy. You know, they're getting dragged through the forest, and then the body just like into a puddle. I don't know why it was funny, but it was.
No, it was very funny because you're not expecting that big of an explosion to happen there. I think that's what it is, because like normally you think it'd be like sploosh, kind of like that, but it's like a bomb goes off in the water, which I think definitely helps out with the overall mood the film is trying to deliver there. But
I'd say a lot of the comedy is just like abrupt chaos, just
yes.
like, there's like a part where the cellar that is such an integral part of the first movie is also like a pretty integral part of this movie, and there's a part where it opens and there's just like a river of blood that just sprays out everywhere. And then it's extra funny because the person that was standing in front of that river of blood, like the very next scene, their clothes are all clean. Like the next cut is just like brand new clothes.
Oh, that's so good. One of my favorite scenes, and this was probably my favorite scene as a teenager, and so that's probably why I still hold it to be like good. Because like overall, I'd probably say modern wise, like just seeing the hand and stuff is like such a great bit there, specifically, especially once he gets to the kitchen there with all the dishes and everything. Such great physicality to come from that.
That was the exact scene where I realized, like, okay, this is like a full-on comedy.
Yeah. You're just like, okay, I understand now.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Why are you hitting yourself?
But one of my favorite scenes growing up watching the film was a part where everything comes to life in the cabin there.
Oh god, the deer on the wall.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite effects.
Yeah, everything's just like cackling and laughing there. And then like Ash is kind of giving into the madness.
Yeah, because there's definitely, there's a lot of like puppetry that goes into like these practical effects, and I think that a lot of the comedy leans into like some of the scenes looked straight up like Muppet scenes, just like that level of bouncing around puppetry, like.
Yeah. Another effect that I thought was very, very interesting, like they almost revisited it, was the mirror there. Because if you remember from the first one, they made it like a puddle there. But with this one, they did like a thing where basically Ash is looking at the mirror and the Ash in the mirror jumps out and grabs a hold of Ash and is talking to him saying like, you're not going to get out of here. You're doomed, basically.
I'm talking to the man in the mirror.
Thank you, MJ.
Yeah, that was the scariest part. So Michael Jackson was there. He killed the kid.
But yeah, there's a lot of great moments. Oh, one of my favorite things, and I don't know why I find this so funny there, it's almost like a Looney Tunes sort of thing, is whenever Ash is having to go out to the cabin to get rid of the disembodied head there specifically, whenever he's looking for the chainsaw and there's like a chalk outline of the chainsaw there.
That one was pretty good. I feel like they probably like went to roll on that scene the first time, and they were like, "How's the audience gonna know that the chainsaw's supposed to be there?"
Yeah.
And then Sam Raimi's like, "I've got an idea."
Yeah.
Just a big old chalk outline.
No, it's I just appreciate so many of the gags and the camera work that is done in this film, which I mentioned to you in the first one, how Sam Raimi is a big fan of the Three Stooges there, to where he basically named the Deadites fake shimps before he had officially called them Deadites, which I think was in this film. They used the term Deadite the first couple of times.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, it was towards like the end of the film there where they like mentioned like Deadites, but before they used to be called fake shimps, you know, after the one of the Stooges there. And I feel like this film especially, because like Bruce is really able to channel his inner stooge, it just helps make the film even more entertaining, because I felt like in the first one he was trying to be more grounded in realism and everything,
Right.
but basically Bruce Campbell was able to amp up the camp of the whole performance there, which I think made it stronger, because again, it's like you mentioned, whenever the hand's making a lot of noises there, just the physicality that's shown, like dragging body across the floor there, is incredible there. And it lends itself to have so many good moments there, to where I got impatient a lot of times in the film, which comes at a bad part of seeing this film so many times. You're like, man, I just want to get to this one scene there specifically.
Yeah, I feel like the use of comedy actually really alleviates some of the like things that could normally be a plot hole, like, you know, because then the excuse is just it's funny now, you know what I mean? Like, why did, like, you know, you might be wondering, why did he feel the need to run out to the workshop? How did he know there was a chainsaw there? You know, all these things, but like it's funny because he just says workshop and then and then runs over there, and then there's an outline of a chainsaw. You know, you would have had to have a reason for that if there was like a serious drama that you were trying to make into a horror film. But because it's like a funny levity, he can just do stuff like that. Or like if they had to find a way to make that, there's a part where he like gears up at the end. You know what I mean? If they had to make that actually badass, it might be more difficult than him just like gearing up and going groovy.
Oh god, that's probably my favorite moment in the entire film. And again, people have like reclipped it so many times because it's just so iconic, but just with the music of him like suiting up there and just saying groovy at the end with the music amping it up there. Oh my gosh, I never get tired of it. Like, I could watch it on loop there. And so I think that's a thing that I appreciate about Evil Dead 2, is that a lot of it is kind of taking ideas and stuff from the first film and basically fine-tuning it and crafting it, and maybe just improving on some of the stuff that there were issues with in the first film there. Because one of the things that I appreciate the callbacks to, because there's a lot of callbacks I feel like to the first film, is seeing Linda's necklace. There, if you look on the ground, it's shaped in a skull again whenever he goes to pick it up there, just like in the first one. So I appreciate that callback. But one of the other aspects that I'm really a big fan of this film is the fact that whenever Annie's going back to the cabin and stuff, she's kind of serving as a way to kind of talk more about what exactly may be going on there, and kind of helps add that, along with the recordings and spiritual visits and stuff they get there, kind of helping explain like what the Evil Dead is overall. So I really liked that aspect a lot. And one of the things I do have to point out that's very impressive there is a lot of the prosthetics that's used there, especially for like making the characters look like Deadites overall there. I feel like it's even more fine-tuned from the first one there. Like, they're like, okay, we know what to do, let's improve on it there specifically. And especially once later you see Henrietta there, that's like insane. And so apparently Henrietta was played by Ted Raimi, who is Sam Raimi's brother. And one of the things I was going to point out with, but I guess it was very grueling to be in that suit, because it's like layer of latex and have to get in, and you know, it's like hot and you're sweating and there's nothing to get out there. And so there's one scene where she's like flying through the air. It's like after she flies and grabs Annie there specifically, her head is leaning this way, and you see like a stream of liquid come out the ear, and that's his sweat.
That's gross.
That was the sweat pooling up there, and so that was the only exit it had. So it was like a big nightmare for him to get in the suit and just do all the stuff he did there specifically.
That sounds gross.
No, yeah, it was super gross, but definitely well worth it just to see all of that there specifically. I also felt like one of the other things I appreciate about this film is the music. I felt like the music was light, but it had some really good tunes. Like, especially love Linda's theme whenever you hear it playing on the piano, whenever Ash is kind of taking a moment to grieve over Linda specifically. So that was another thing I appreciate, is them implementing more music, I felt like, into this film.
I just feel like the sound design in general is on a better level. Because a lot of the effects you just wouldn't have played off if it wasn't for the sound design. But...
Yeah, no, the sound is definitely good, and just the way they use like certain like noises and effects and everything, even as simple as the scene where everything in the room is laughing there, just the different ways I can never imagine how something could laugh there specifically. Right. And so I feel like there's a lot of impressive moments like that throughout the film that just makes it such an experience to sit down and watch through there.
Right. Even like the part where the hand is like dragging the body, I feel like that wouldn't have been played off as like a good funny moment. Like it could have easily just been like a dull extended scene of a hand dragging a body for 45 seconds. But it was funny just because of the little like chittering noises that hand makes, where it's like
yeah. But no, there's a whole lot of good moments, and I know we've been kind of dancing around like some moments there overall. But is there anything that you kind of wanted to mention that you really liked, or things that you didn't quite so like there before kind of mentioning stuff that's spoilerish?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I feel like I've hit on the points of. I feel like where this movie has both changed and I think improved really the universe of The Evil Dead in my mind. I guess the one thing I would mention, since it's right at the beginning, is the weird kind of like lore dump they have right at the beginning.
Yeah,
where they're just like, hey, here's the Evil Dead stuff, instead of like letting you explore that through the movie. It felt like the opening cutscene of like a video game, like video game storytelling is just like, here's and like you're trying to click through this, and it's like, nope, this is an unskippable cutscene. You're just like, oh, thousands of years ago.
Yeah, because that was like an interesting thing, because really they only picked up bits and pieces about the Evil Dead in the first film, more towards the end of the film and stuff, even though they heard like some tidbits early on. So it's kind of interesting to see how this one's slightly different, that you're given more information on what all's happening there. So I think that's a definite solid point. I don't think there's anything I could talk about without really kind of mentioning spoilers and stuff. I know I've had to kind of dance and stuff while still giving people an idea on what all this film has to offer. So whenever it comes to the sequel, did the sequel bring stuff you were hoping The Evil Dead would bring?
I really didn't think it would go in this direction, to be honest with you. I mean, I knew... Yeah, obviously you talked about the first Evil Dead being a little more lighthearted with the evil that is portrayed, but yeah, I didn't really think it would go full comedy. I guess I didn't have much expectations, but that was not one of them. But I do feel like it actually improved upon sort of the universe and the story that they were trying to tell in this requel. And yeah, I thought they had a more creative moments, and overall, I think they accomplished a greater feat than the first movie did. But
no, I think that's definitely a solid thing overall there. So yeah, just was curious, and I'm glad that overall you've been pleasantly surprised, which will lead me to ask you, what would you rate The Evil Dead 2, Aaron?
I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10.
Okay, not too bad.
It's a good movie. It's obviously, I do feel like comedy's a little bit a crutch to some degrees as much as it is a savior, because I feel like if they did try to make this same exact movie without it being funny and just being serious and horror all the time, it would probably be like a 3. But
Yeah.
but because it is, I mean, so much of the movie is enjoyable because of those moments. I will say the reason it's fairly lower, 5 is average, so it is above average. I had a good time with it. But I feel like it really takes a while to sort of get to the point. You're left wondering what the plot of this movie is going to be for like the first 30 minutes or so, which is kind of a long time to wait until you realize what the movie is going to be about. It also kind of takes that long to realize that it's like funny, like on purpose, and not just because like it's bad or something, but it's like, no, it's actually like this on purpose. So there are a few flaws with it. And again, I mean, I feel like a lot of the acting performances, really just a couple, were not amazing, but were, again, given a crutch by comedy, where it's like, okay, you could just sort of overact and be really goofy with these scenes. Whereas, doing a Oscar-winning performance job is obviously a lot more difficult. But it's for those reasons that I sort of give it a few points off. But again, I think the sound design's amazing. I think the creatures are really cool. The one thing that I did miss from the first movie is I do think there are just not as many like deadites. I feel like you see a lot of characters in the first movie that then come back and they're like mischievous demon people, and there's like a conflict there of like, oh no, this is somebody that I loved and was friends with, and now they're trying to kill me. And there is that element here, but I just didn't feel like it was played as strongly, and it wasn't as central of a part. It was just kind of like the spooky, mysterious dead that was the villain. And so overall, I feel like the villain was a little bit weaker, even though a lot of the effects and the stunts and things were stronger. And really, even the story overall, I feel like, was stronger. But yeah, those are sort of some of my positives and my criticisms. But yeah, overall, I don't remember what I gave the first Evil Dead, but
I think you gave it like a 3, didn't you, or something like that?
I probably gave it like a 4.
Okay,
maybe.
like 3, 4 around there. It was definitely lower.
Yeah, I think I thought I gave it a 4, but I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'd give this one a 6 because it's definitely an improvement. I think it's I think it's a step in the right direction, but it's not. And I enjoyed it a lot more too. My enjoyment score would probably be, if I was just rating it purely on how much I enjoyed it, would probably be more than a 6. But as like a objective film standard, if I'm trying to keep that sort of rating system, then yeah, I think it's about a 6. It's definitely worth a watch, but it's not the best horror movie ever made or anything.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair points and criticisms. And, coming like me, like Evil Dead is one of my favorite franchises of all time there. And while everyone says 2 is their favorite out of the 3, this one, even though I like it more than the first Evil Dead, is not my favorite. I prefer the third one out of the 3 films and stuff. I only mentioned that I prefer the third one because, well, I already told you the first one was my favorite. The second one's not my favorite. So therefore, the last one is my favorite there. But it's definitely a film that I can appreciate. It was kind of interesting to go back and revisit this film and stuff, because whenever I was younger as a teenager, the first time experiencing a film like this, I'm like, man, this is crazy and awesome and everything else. But being older and everything and having seen the film so many times and stuff, it's like I mentioned before, I got a little antsy kind of waiting for those moments, because the moments that are amazing are downright terrific there and stuff. And so then it kind of made the waiting for it a little more agitating and stuff. That's the best way I could come up with it. But I mean, that being said, it's I struggle to figure out where exactly to put Evil Dead 2 score wise, because before I used to give it a strong 8.5 and stuff, but I feel like watching it now and everything else, it's still a terrific film and everything, and there's a lot of moments that are some of the best moments in film I've seen. Again, just Ash having that moment of being a complete badass towards the end there. But overall, if I had to rate it, it would probably be 7.5 to a very minimum 8. I just figured if I rate Nightmare on Elm Street on the lowish 8 side and stuff, I feel like it just almost meets up with The Nightmare on Elm Street, coincidentally, which I find very funny, especially since there's the claw and everything there
Right.
specifically. But that's kind of like where I'd rate it. It's one of those things that I'm like, there's a lot of moments I enjoy about this film, but I don't know how soon I am to go back and watch it, as opposed to like check out the clips repeatedly on YouTube, because there's so many great clips there. But again, like Aaron mentioned, like just because I enjoyed it less this time around, you also have to take into consideration I've seen this film so many times and stuff, and so that just kind of speaks to a film's strength on how much are you able to watch and enjoy this there. And for me, it's like I could definitely watch it there and stuff, but it definitely does get slow at certain points, even though there are some points that are just downright terrific there. So I think that's a fair thing to say overall there. So I feel like even if you hadn't seen the very first one, you probably could watch this one and still be okay, just because, again,
totally think you could.
it retells the first story in the first few minutes of the film.
I feel like nothing that happens in the first film is like actually that relevant here. You know what I mean? Because they already they give you in the film everything you need to know about this film.
And so would you recommend, like, if you were to go out to somebody and you had to recommend Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 to them, would you tell them to watch Evil Dead 2?
Yeah, probably. Honestly, if they were just gonna watch one, I'd be like, yeah, watch Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, which is so funny. You don't ever hear like, watch the sequel to the film there first.
Sometimes you do. Yeah. Like, think about like if you're gonna tell people to watch Full Metal Alchemist, are you gonna tell them to watch Full Metal Alchemist, or are you gonna tell them to watch Brotherhood? And you're probably gonna tell them to watch Brotherhood, right?
That's true.
And that's like a requel. That's like a remake, from anime perspective.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely true. Definitely true there.
So I feel like that does happen. But even though I'm kind of a weirdo and I like the first Full Metal Alchemist better.
I gotta be honest, I've only ever seen one episode, and it was of Brotherhood.
Really?
Yeah, and it wasn't anything I didn't dislike it or anything. It was just like I watched it, I'm like, oh, that was pretty good.
I just feel like the first Full Metal Alchemist is paced a little slower. You get to like actually there's build up to these moments, and Brotherhood is they just try to like get the manga adapted real quick. So.
Okay. Well, there's
Brotherhood's good though. They're both great. The first one's a little dated, but there's my review of.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to. Thank you for listening for this. Thank you for listening to this episode of Full Metal Alchemist versus Brotherhood.
Hey, it wouldn't be Poppin the Scary if we didn't get off a tangent on some other medium.
Oh yeah, you betcha. You betcha.
Hey, you see the new Star Wars?
Oh God, no! Shut it down. Talking about spoilers now, since you guys have heard our general thoughts about it, Aaron, was there a particular spoiler that you really wanted to talk about overall? Because there's one for me.
Oh, if there's one for you, you should go.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go and stuff. But I have a question. It's kind of like a spoiler question.
Okay.
Whenever Annie is showing the pages and showing the hero from the 1300s,
I instantly knew how the movie was going to end.
You did?
I was like, oh, they just drew Bruce like a caricature of Bruce Campbell. He had a chainsaw. He was wearing the blue shirt. I was like, oh, that's okay. He gets sent back in time somehow.
Kudos to you. I didn't know the first couple of times.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know the first time.
Oh man, that was obvious to me. Just 'cause it was the chainsaw that gave it away. I was like, oh, like some hero saved them. I was like, okay, well, and then and then the very next thing they say is you have to like open a portal to that space time or whatever. And I was like, yep, Bruce Campbell's getting sent back somehow.
Maybe it's because I watched it like on a tube TV on my DVD player where it's so dark where I'm just like, oh, okay,
right.
Or maybe I just like zoned out of it there specifically. But like I was curious about
to the exact picture, then you might miss that.
But so it wasn't too much of a big surprise that he went back in time.
No.
There. For me, I was definitely surprised. Like, if you're not paying attention, that comes out of left field. Yeah. They mention like that one tidbit and that's it.
Right.
They do not tell you he's going back to medieval times.
Right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like if you do pick up on that tidbit, though, it's like obvious because Bruce Campbell's like, who's this? And she's like, oh, that's the legendary hero that saved them from the evil or whatever.
Oh yeah,
he's like, didn't do a very good job then. And it's like, well, that's because you haven't been sent back in time yet. Come on.
Yeah, and trust me, like I've seen it the other times. Now it's not like Oh, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. No, I remember seeing it, but just the first time it came out of left field, I'm like, what in the world? They're back in time now?
I feel like that would have been a better trip if you didn't know it was coming. Just like,
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah. So once you realized he was going to go back in time, what did you think about that? Because that's a pretty big jump.
I mean, it just sort of made obvious that okay, because right after that is revealed is whenever the hillbilly dude is like, "We gotta go find Billy Joe." Like, fuck your pages, and it just kind of outlines exactly how the plot is gonna go. And it's not like watching a horror movie. You're necessarily gonna be like, "The evil wins." Oh no, like they're gonna, the good guy's gonna win in the end somehow, presumably. But it just sort of solidified the fact to me of like, okay, somehow they're going to go into the basement, they're going to get the pages, they're going to summon the portal. And so, like, it just, obviously I didn't know in what fashion they were going to do these things, but, like, it just instantly laid out the rest of the movie for me. We're like, okay, these plot points have to be hit now because I know by the end of it, Bruce goes back in time.
Yeah. So it's definitely, and how do you feel about the idea about where they took the series about taking the main protagonist and putting him back in time?
I feel like it was the most appropriate thing to do after you give your protagonist a chainsaw hand. Yeah, you gotta send him on like some sort of wacky Metroid journey. He has a weapon hand now.
Yep, and I have to ask, because again, we dance around this lightly and stuff, but that scene, and we've mentioned it so many times, but with the hand dragging Bruce's body there, because once the deadite head of Linda bites it, it becomes corrupted by the evil dead, and it starts dragging his body across. What do you think about that scene, just seeing him slam down that kitchen knife in the hand and breaking out the chainsaw to cut it off?
That's where I, like, appreciated his, like, overacting. All the overacting Jim Carrey stuff, like, made sense past that point, because he had, like, officially gone loopy. He's cutting his own hand off, and, like, I mean... But I thought that was sick, because he had, like, become unconscious from his hand beating himself up.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up, he stabs the hand, he manages to grab the chainsaw and just, like, burn it off. And yeah, that's where I appreciate whenever they leaned into all this wackiness. I mean, really, like, is the most logical solution to go to the warehouse to weld together a contraption to keep this chainsaw on your arm, like to saw off the shotgun. Like, are these appropriate steps that a rational person would make? No, but this is like so over the top that like I feel like it makes Bruce Campbell's character actually really cool, because he's just like this goofy action movie like chainsaw hand man, just like Duke Nukem demon killer,
No, I always thought that was the coolest idea, having a chainsaw on a hand there specifically. So that's why I think I appreciate that scene whenever him and Annie go out to the shed there, basically to modify the chainsaw there. And not only that, he takes his shotgun he's had throughout the entire film, makes it a sawed-off shotgun there, does the flip, kicks it around, and even has a device where it shows you how he starts up the chainsaw. That's also the coolest thing there, which I think because of that, it's just made him an icon in horror there, because I mean, you just see him and he just looks like a complete badass there.
I also love that through the whole movie, like, because he gets injured in the beginning and has like a bloody like face, and it makes it look like he has a unibrow throughout the whole movie, because he just has like blood across the bridge, which I feel like is honestly a cool iconic trait, to be the unibrow man. So shout out to Ash for rocking that look.
Yeah, so I was just curious. I had to ask about the ending. Like, it was just one of those things, because again, if you miss that bit, it comes out of left field there.
I knew it was gonna. It was like I still enjoyed it happening though, because then I knew it's like, okay, he's gonna have to make that descent into the basement and fight the witch somehow, and then they're gonna open the portal, and I didn't know exactly what that was gonna look like, but I loved how the forest just like descended onto the house once she started the chant.
Yeah, she had to manifest the evil into a physical form. So I thought that scene was incredible, just seeing that. I feel like, again, they just took stuff from the first one and amped it up even more, which I think made it a much stronger film in this scenario. I did also want to ask, because we dance around this lightly, but how did you feel about Ash being possessed by the evil dead there and having to fight it throughout the whole film? Because again, you're kind of used to people being possessed by the evil dead, and yeah, they're gone. They're goners.
Right. I liked that. I do think that was one point throughout the entire film, though, that where the universe doesn't really make sense or follow its own rules or anything, because like that would happen to, like, I don't know what happened to the Ed guy where he suddenly became possessed. Like, it's because he got his foot bitten by the witch, but even then it was like he was wearing shoes that didn't show any blood. Like, I was like, it's like, how did he suddenly turn? But then Ash can, like, control when he can turn back if he sees the necklace or whatever. And all these other people have been injured by. But so it's, like, hard to tell whenever somebody sustains an injury if they're gonna become part of the evil dead or not. And if there's a way to turn them back. Okay, if you can turn Ash back, then was there a way to turn that lady's mother back? You know, maybe, but we're just gonna kill her instead. So, so that conflict was never played upon, except specifically with Ash, which I feel like it kind of muddied the waters of the universe. But I also liked that the protagonist, he's fighting this evil and he's also like becoming this evil. I kind of dug it.
Yeah, I dug it too, because I feel like it added more danger to it in the fact that he's clearly the most adept one at surviving there. And then once he goes down, at that point in time especially, it's only Annie and Jake, which Jake is basically kind of a bumbling fool and stuff that gets bodied by Ash pretty quickly and then gets stabbed by Annie by the Kandarian knife, aka the Cumdarian knife.
The cum knife.
Yeah.
Because didn't it like dissolve everything into cum, then it stabbed?
Yeah, it made them like spit up like white liquid there. But I really like that aspect there. And it also adds for a great bit whenever he snaps out of it there and Annie's trying to kill him with the axe. He's like, hey, I'm fine. Yeah. And so then he takes a break, leans against the wall, and you just see the axe fly by him. He's like, what did I tell you?
I'm fine.
I thought that was also a great thing to add into the film, is like Ash is having to fight this evil dead that has grabbed a hold of him specifically. And so another thing with the film that I do appreciate is the fact that, you know, like most Survivor films and stuff, there's always that weak link there, and Jake proves to be that one whenever Bobby Joe goes missing. And I think it definitely helps to add kind of more conflict there.
Sure.
And I definitely don't feel like it's unjustified that he would go irrational there, especially with Bobby Joe being really dumb after having the hand that she just bolts out of the cabin.
Right. She's like, and I believe both of those characters' motivations too. Like, they were dumb ideas, like within the context of the film, but like I believe that, you know, you get attacked by a hand and you've been shot in the same day and you've been terrorized in this cabin, your instinct is probably just gonna fucking run. I'm just gonna run. I'm gonna risk it. I'm gonna get through the forest. And then if you are a dude who's a greasy meth head and your 10 out of 10 girlfriend wife thing that's like 20 years younger than you just ran off, I'd probably go try to get her too, because you're not getting a second chance at that. So.
Oh, that was good. That was good. And speaking of Bobby Joe, there was one thing the first time I watched this film that I was worried they were going to do from the first film.
Yeah, I was in the same boat.
Yeah, because I was
like,
doing that again. But I feel like even though there was like hints of like tears and stuff, I don't feel like it was so on the nose there. I feel like mostly they, like, once they start dragging her and then they have her slam against a tree there, and I'm like, oh, thank God.
It's just
she
violence.
slammed the tree didn't slam her.
Thank God it's just violence and not sexual violence.
Yes, that was my relief.
Me too.
There specifically, because
if you don't remember from the first movie, like, there's a woman that gets like sexually assaulted by the demon forest, and it's just like, this is unnecessary.
So I felt like this time around it was done more tastefully, you know, just
definitely.
getting dragged at lightning speeds through puddles that just explode there. So I definitely appreciated that more so. And Yeah.
Yeah, that scene was actually really funny. That's what I was talking about when someone gets dragged through the forest and they get hit by the puddle, and yeah, big splash zone.
Yeah, just...
If that was the log flume ride and I was on the little bridge beneath it, I would have been a happy camper.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on there. Yeah, go ahead.
No, speaking of puddles, big brown puddles, there's a part like in the very beginning when Bruce gets launched into the forest.
Oh yeah,
and he lands like face first in that puddle, and he's just like blubbling air. I wonder if this really was just like a mud puddle they had him just like,
I would believe it. I mean, Bruce goes through a lot of crap.
Yeah, but that, like, as an actor, that would suck, man. Like, fill that with chocolate milk or something. Like, give me a better time than to just like bury my face in a mud puddle and blow bubbles. Like,
yeah, in all honesty, I believe it probably was a mud puddle there.
Gross.
Yeah. But Bruce is a real trooper. I tell you what.
Shouts out to Brucey.
But yeah, I feel like the fight scenes are also good, like especially once he gets suited up there with the chainsaw and a shotgun and decides to go down to the basement since Jake threw down the pages of the Necronomicon, which I think is also a good move plot-wise because it gives him a reason to go down to the basement, because it's like, well, we have to get the pages because that's basically what's going to save us overall there, which I was surprised that Professor Nobi came back as a ghost to kind of give the message.
Yeah, that one felt a little shoot in, but I also like the universe implications that, like, sure, if the dead are coming back to life and the professor's dead, then he could find a way to infiltrate that world too. But... yeah,
it definitely helps to give like them a reason to go to stuff, because otherwise I doubt they would have read the pages, which again, I appreciate Annie kind of being the more astute one and just being able to read the pages. And while I feel like the fight with Henrietta wasn't quite as big and epic as you would feel it is, since it's basically built up because she's trapped in the basement throughout the entirety of the film there. I feel like it's done perfectly enough, and again, like, Ash turns into full up bad Ash, you know what I'm saying? Especially whenever Henrietta flies out of the basement to attack Annie, and you just hear that music again as he gets his arm in his chainsaw, pushes himself up there. And then whenever he cuts the head off of Henrietta there, and she's like, I'll swallow your soul. And he's like, swallow this.
And he just comes.
Yeah.
Swallow this.
Absolutely. Oh, and also, I don't know why I've always found this funny, but I love the bloody skeleton of Jake you see. It's like, comedic skeleton and torn up overalls there. I always thought that was a really funny throwback there whenever Ash is trying to grab all the pages there. The one thing I will also say is that hand caused so many problems there. They just could not get rid of it.
Yeah, why didn't they just shoot the hand? I mean,
I think Ash tried at the beginning, and that's whenever he got sprayed there.
Right.
So, and it was just always disappearing and only showing up, just causing issues, causing Bobby Joe to freak out and run into the woods. And then the most devastating one, backstabbing Annie while she's reciting from the pages of the Necronomicon with the Kandarian knife there.
Yeah.
Were you, I'm sure you probably weren't too surprised that everybody died except Ash.
Yeah, I mean, I figured it was either going to be everybody but Ash or everybody but Ash and the lady. So it's sad that the lady got backstabbed. But yeah, I mean, I do think that's like a weird lore thing too, because like dismembering dead bodies seems to like keep them from coming back to some degree. But then, like, Bruce's hand is still constantly animated, despite, just being a hand and being stabbed and hit and all this stuff. So, it's one of those things where it's like, if you take the lore seriously, why is this working? But this isn't. What's the deal? But, I mean, that's part of the reason why it's such a fun movie, is because you're just like, fuck.
No, and it's just fun. And I think that's the important thing to take away from it. It's a fun film there, specifically. Like, I feel like there is moments that are kind of genuinely horrifying, especially kind of gross out, like whenever Bobby Joe swallows the eyeball that shoots out of Henrietta's skull.
And that one was just like, there's no way you can accomplish that without it being a gag.
Yeah.
Because it's just like an eyeball shoots out, the camera follows it flying around, this woman screaming, and it goes right in her mouth. That's like this. And that part I was just like, that was gross, but like, okay, that's just a goofy gag.
Mm-hmm.
But there are parts where they're cutting people up with chainsaws or axes, and blood's just gushing all over the room, and that kind of stuff is like,
Yeah. Well,
so it's a mix.
Yeah, understandable. Was there any other spoilers you wanted to talk about with Evil Dead 2? Anything that was burning on your noggin or anything like that?
I do wonder why they didn't draw the car in the depiction of the hero from the past. Maybe they did. I have to look at the picture.
No, they didn't. I think it's just because
the car gets dragged into the past.
It was like, so you take the drawing and the person that drew the sketch, the car was right behind them. They can't give it too much away.
Right.
Like, why is there a car in 1300?
Can you spoil something about me for Evil Dead 3?
Uh-huh.
Does any of it take place in the past with Bruce Campbell?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's called our Evil Dead Army of Darkness.
Oh.
Yeah, so we'll have to check that one out soon. It seems like you're pretty interested to see what exactly happens with Bruce going back to the 1300s.
Yeah, is that our next movie? Because I feel like that's a cool movie if it's set in the 1300s, just like guy with a shotgun and a chainsaw killing demons in the past in medieval times.
I mean, I gotta be honest, I had a movie laid out,
yeah.
But if you genuinely want to watch this one next,
no,
that's perfectly
no. I'm sure we'll get to it at some point.
Yeah, no worries. It just seemed, I didn't want to be like, I'm glad you're interested in this movie. Let's watch this movie.
Let's watch something else.
Let's watch something else.
Fucking idiot.
But, I mean, overall, pretty good signs that you do have a genuine curiosity of like, okay.
Because it was a fun movie, and I think they would have a lot of fun with it in like a different time period too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, we'll maybe have to check it out soon, more sooner than other sequels there. So stay tuned with that there. I'm guessing there's nothing else that needs to be said about Evil Dead 2. Feel like
not that I remember.
Okay, well, no worries. I feel like we talked a very decent bit about the film there, but both of Aaron and I's recommendations, definitely check it out. It's worth your time and stuff, just both as a horror and a comedy
just
there.
A really campy, goofy, but also over-the-top horror movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sign yourself up.
Okay, well, and instead of going to Army of Darkness, now we'll go back the original route that I had laid out there, but, Army of Darkness may be lurking around the corner sooner than you know it. So, here comes some teasing. Here, and I'm going to try to make this as easy as possible, because I felt like a complete jackwagon leading you along, and you're like, Coale, I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, that's part of the fun.
Okay.
I mean, that's the point of this podcast. I don't know a lot about
So, this film is a book adaptation.
Okay.
But not
Stephen King book adaptation.
It is.
Those are the only movies they adapted.
But it's a remake.
Oh.
Also.
So it's the remake of It?
Yes.
Easy.
Easy. Yep, we're going to be watching that on the next episode. So thank you all so much for listening to this episode. We'll see y'all next time when we're popping the scary with It 2017. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @CoalkirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.